Let me share my screen. Mm. All right. Open the chat window. Okay, how many we have? Okay. All right. Okay, so let's start. So good morning, everyone, and I wish you a go have something. Divyanka, okay, yeah. Good morning. So good morning, everyone. I wish you are going well, and so this is our first week and our second lecture, and from today we will start introduce some Matlab fundamental knowledge first. And like I mentioned in the first lecture, rudimentary knowledge of Matlab is desirable, but it's not a requirement. So because we will cover an extensive introduction in this week and the next week to the Matlab fundamentals and programming. And after this week, I may send you a survey regarding the class, and so you can expect some questions like how do you feel about this class, and why do you take it, and what specific topics you're interested. And based on your interest, I may change our research topics, or uh, uh, I may change some lectures, in the following weeks. And oops. So in case you missed this slide in our first lecture, and here are some topics we would like to cover in this semester, like the MATLAB fundamentals, or linear processing, edge detection, or segmentation, clustering, and artificial neural networks. And so this is our first week, so we will focus on the MATLAB fundamentals. And something you want to pay attention is the first one, and the most important one is the final exam. So the final exam will be on May 9th, and it's a Tuesday, and from 8 a.m. to 10:30 a.m. So you have like 2 hours and 30 minutes. And please keep in mind, I want to mention this because we won't be able to change the final exam schedule. So make sure you keep this on your calendar. And because in the fall semester, some students, there was a time conflict between the computer vision exam and some other exams. So make sure you keep this in mind, and make sure there's no time conflict for you for the final exam. And the second is the homework one will be posted by the end of this week. So probably on Friday or on maybe on before Sunday, yeah. And it will be some basic mm, operations for the Matlab for some image processing tasks. So don't feel any pressure, okay? And also for the office hours, like I mentioned in the first lecture, my office hour will be after the Tuesday and Thursday's class. So if you have any question, you can stay on in the Zoom after the lecture, or if you don't have if you have, for example, if you have another class, you can just send me an email and we can schedule another time. Is there any question before we start about the class, our class schedule, the homework, the project? Is the final exam online or in person? Good question. So the final exam will be online. And we will keep you busy, so you can expect like questions like the multi-choice and some other questions like programming. Of course, there will be programming questions for your final exam, and even for the midterm, you can expect some programming questions from your homework or from the project. So that's something I want to mention later, and make sure you work on your homework and projects independently. And for the projects, of course, you can have some group members, but you still need to understand everything about your project. So because they will show up in your midterm or final exams. Mm-hmm. When will the first homework be assigned? Like I mentioned in this slide, the first homework will be posted maybe tomorrow or on weekend. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. Is there a schedule for which parts of the textbook we should be reading? Yes, so thanks for your question, Michael. So I will post the announcements regularly in my courses announcement in the announcement. So you want to check my courses, my courses frequently. And for example, I think in this week, before our lecture, I would suggest you to read like the first and second chapter about the textbook. Mm-hmm. Yeah, no problem. Is there any other question? If no more question, we will start our lecture. Okay, great. Let's see how many students we have. Okay, we have 27 students. Good. Where are the others? I think we have 31 students. Where are the other 4 students? Wake up. All right, so here's our outline. Here's the outline for today's lecture. So first, I will introduce the Matlab and why do we choose Matlab. And the second, I will cover some fundamental statements, for example, the control statements, such as if else, for, and while loop. So the first question will be, why Matlab, right? And there are so many um, programming tools like Python and C++, and why do we choose Matlab? Well, an important characteristic underlying the design of image processing system is the significant level of testing and experimentation that normally is required before arriving at an acceptable solution. So this characteristic implies that the ability to formulate approaches and quickly prototype candidate solutions generally plays a major role in reducing the cost and time required to arrive at a viable system implementation. And for MATLAB, the name MATLAB stands for Matrix Laboratory. And MATLAB was written originally to provide an easy access to matrix and linear algebra software that previously required writing Fortran programs to use, so which is a very old programming language. I'm not sure if for computer science students are still learning this Fortran language or not. And today, MATLAB incorporates state-of-art numerical computation software that is highly optimized for modern processors and memory architectures. And for example, in our university environment, MATLAB is the standard computational tool for introductory and advanced courses in mathematics, engineering, and science. So in industry, MATLAB is the computational tool of choice for research, development, analysis, and deployment. So here is a brief story about myself. So when I was a PhD student at UC Merced, I have a friend. He was also working on PhD, but after 2 years, he went back to China and joined a startup company about self-driving vehicles. So they was doing the research about the brake system for the self-driving vehicles. So when I asked him what kind of tools you use for the development, right? And I was surprised that he told me it was MATLAB, because at that time most of us we use like Python or C++ for the programming tasks. So, and it turns out that MATLAB is really, for example, easy and convenient to develop some new computing toolboxes. And another example is like, I'm not sure if you heard of fractional calculus. So which means that the order of the derivative is not an integer, is a fractional number. And for that part, for example, if you use C++ or Python, there are not many packages to use for the fractional calculus calculation. And for MATLAB, there are already many packages for the fractional calculus, so which is very convenient to use. So I think that's kind of some reasons we choose MATLAB. And also, all the programming logic is similar. So if you know one, for example, if you are already very familiar with Python or C++, so I'm pretty sure you can learn the MATLAB very quickly. Okay, and okay, let's go back to our lecture. So also the image processing toolbox is a collection of MATLAB functions that extend the capability of the MATLAB environment for digital image processing problems. You may use some other toolboxes, for example, like the computer vision, signal processing, deep learning, fuzzy logic, and wavelet toolboxes. So we will introduce them when we meet them in our following lectures. And next is, to be an excellent student in this class, here are some tasks or requirements you want to pay attention. So the first is to the program on the midterms and the final exams. So I think I mentioned at the beginning of our lectures. So you will have some programming questions in the midterm and final exams. So make sure you finish the homework or quizzes or project. I mean, make sure the homework and the quizzes, make sure you finish them by yourself. And because you want to understand all the steps and everything that shows up in your homeworks. And also have a growing mindset. So growing mindset means that you are eager to learn something new. And for example, maybe you know C++ or Python, but you haven't learned the Matlab yet. And so make sure you, for the technical skills, you know, the more the better, and learn another programming language is not bad, right? And okay, so is there any questions? If no questions, I'll keep going. Good. So here are some public resources I want to introduce for you. And the first one is, of course, the OpenCV, the official website. And the second one is a programming platform is called Dive into Deep Learning. And the third one is the PyTorch tutorials. And let me see if I can open my, okay, let me briefly introduce them. Oops. Okay, you can see my, okay, so the first one I want to mention, of course, we are using Matlab. Okay, so if you're not familiar with Matlab, or you want to search some document or some toolbox, you can go to the Matlab document website. And for example, you may use image processing toolbox frequently. So in the official website, you can find plenty of tutorials and documents and examples. For example, here you can see the image analysis, and image segmentation or registration. We will cover them in our following lectures. And another one is the support website. You know, so at here you can see lots of stuff about the image processing, like the image conversion and the filtering, enhancement, and image segmentation and analysis. So we will cover them in our following lectures. And but if you want to have a general idea of what they are, you can feel free to reach out to the website and take a look. And of course, for computer vision, there are many other uh, tools you can use. For example, another one is, for example, if you're interested in deep learning, so here is a very good tutorial, is dive into deep learning. And at here, you can learn the lots of fundamental knowledge about the deep learning, like the neural networks, the multi-layer perceptions, and also the convolutional neural networks. And of course, some other stuff. For example, there is a section called computer vision. You can find lots of useful tools in this website. But I don't encourage you to read them now unless you are already very familiar with the Python or some fundamental knowledge. But this can be used as advanced tool, you know, when you have some fundamental knowledge about computer vision, about Python programming, you can reach out to this website. So another common tool is maybe you take the machine learning class at RIT. So another popular Python package is the scikit-learn, which is a machine learning toolbox. So at here you can learn lots of stuff like classification, regression, and clustering, and also for pre-processing the data set. And of course, the most popular toolbox for the computer vision is the OpenCV website. And so there are lots of there are some free courses online. So if you are very interested in so after this class, you're familiar with Matlab, and also you want to learn Python, and that's a very good tool that you can use. Okay, the last one is PyTorch. I'm pretty sure lots of you have heard about the PyTorch and TensorFlow. Those are two main platforms that we use to develop our projects. And you can find lots of things on their official website. So I'm not gonna mention too much. Like for example, if you want to go tutorials, you can find lots of things. And one more thing is for the dive into deep learning, you can see that there are many different tools. You can use PyTorch or MXNet and TensorFlow. You know, they have different platforms. So the language is also very different. For example, let's say if you're interested in fully convolutional neural networks, so there are tutorials. They're written by PyTorch or MXNet. So for some sections, there are even like TensorFlow. So those are some very useful tools. And don't try to learn them all at once. And so learn them step by step, you know. So there's some things, some public resources I want to mention. And but don't give yourself too much pressure, okay? But for now, I wish you can focus just on MATLAB. And those are some tools to advance your technology in the future, you know, after the lectures, after this semester, if you're still interested in computer vision, those are some very useful public resources you can use. Okay, so I've been talking about MATLAB, computer vision and machine learning a lot, and you may wonder what's the difference between them, right? So in general, in simple terms, computer vision is a technology that attempts to train computers to recognize patterns in viral data in a similar way as our humans do. And on the other hand, machine learning is a process that enables computers to learn how to process and react to data inputs based on precedents set by previous actions. So in short, machine learning is more general and does not necessarily involve the viral data set. So in both computer vision and machine learning, the aim is for computer systems to learn how to process and react to data in a specific situation. But however, computer vision is much more focused on imagery and viral data, which while machine learning focuses on other types of data set and aims at, for example, image classification, object detection, object segmentation, object tracking in the videos. So in both cases, the outcome is the same. And but however, the types of the input data determines which learning process would work best. And the key outcome is that the computer system should be able to learn from the previous data, right? So that's some general, that's kind of some general difference between the machine learning and the computer vision. All right, so let's go to, oops. Oh, I'm sorry. I think I lost some connections. Let me share my screen. Oops. What happened? Yeah. Sorry for the inconvenience. Let me reshare my screen. Okay, so you can also have, so while you're waiting, so I think I suggest you to uh, install the Matlab. So if you have installed the Matlab, you can open your Matlab. Okay, I think we are back. Oh. Okay, I think we are back to the, so you can see my screen, right? If yes, tap yes in the chat window, okay? Yeah, okay, thanks. Great. So if you have installed Matlab, I can see this, okay, cool. So if you have installed the Matlab and feel free to open it, and while I'm talking about it, you can try some demo codes in the Matlab. So let me go to the next slide. So the first one, some general concepts about Matlab is the hiders. So do you need to import hiders in Matlab? The short answer is no. You don't need to ever. And Matlab will search your path for you. So any file ran in Matlab, must reside in the current folder or in a folder that is on the search path. And by default, the files supplied with Matlab and the MathWorks toolboxes are included in the search path. And the easiest way to see which folders and files on the search path or add or modify a search path is to use the set path icon in the home tab in the tool strip. So it's a good practice to add commonly used folders to the search path to avoid repeatedly, having to browse to the locations of these folders. And another question commonly asked about Matlab is it compiled or interpreted? Well, Matlab is interpreted programming language, and this means usually it will be slower than many other languages to run, but faster to develop in. So the difference between an interpreted and a compiled language lies in the result of the process of interpreting or compiling. So an interpreter produces a result from a program, and while a compiler produces a program written in assembly language. So here are some examples of compiled languages. For example, the C, C++. Those are common compiled languages. And for interpreted languages, for example, the Python or JavaScript, those are at Matlab, those are common interpreted languages. So here's a comparison between the compiled languages and interpreted languages. And like I mentioned, programs that are compiled into native machine code tend to be faster than interpreted code. And this is because the process of translating code at runtime that adds to the overhead and can cause the program to be slower overall. And interpreted languages tend to be more flexible and often offer features like dynamic typing and a smaller program size. And also because interpreters execute the source program code themselves, and the code itself is a platform independent. And the most notable disadvantage is typical execution speed compared to the compiled languages. So another basic question is how do you run it, right? And it's very simple. You just run the Matlab application and ran the commands at the command prompt. So very straightforward. And to stop the Matlab, you can use return function, which will returns from a routine. And also you can type exist with parentheses in the command prompt. That will kill the Matlab. So every time you learn something new or some toolboxes, the first thing is how to get help. And in Matlab, there are several ways you can get help. And the principal way to get help is to use the Matlab help browser. So the help browser consists of two panes, the help navigator pane, and usually we use it to find the information, and the display pane, which is to view the information. And it's a good practice to open the help browser at the beginning of a Matlab session, you know, to have help readily available during the code development and other Matlab tasks. And for example, if you want to know a function, you can also type doc followed with your function and at the command prompt. So for example, you can type, for example, you want to say how the IAMRead function works. You can just type doc and IAMRead in the command prompt. And that will display the reference page for the function called IAMRead in the display pane of the help browser. And this command opens the browser if it's not open already. And the doc function works also for user-written code files that contains the help text. And so some other help methods are like, you can also use the function look for. So if, and also you can use the tab key in the Matlab. For example, if for a simple function like IAMRead or IAMShow, if you don't remember the full name of the function, you can just type IAM and then type then click the tab key, and the tab key will complete your functions, and which will give you a few potential functions you're looking for. So that's something you want to keep in your mind. And also some other platforms will allow you to use the F1 key to get the help the help browser, yeah. And so if all of them, usually those functions will help you get your help. And so if you still cannot solve your problem, you can reach out to me or to your classmates, or just search the internet, right? So comments. So in Matlab, we use the percent symbol for the comments, and you can put the percentage symbol at the start of the line. That will comment the whole line. So here's a quick question for you. Are there any block comments in Matlab? So please type yes or no in the chat window. So what's your answer? Yes, yes, yes. Good, nice. Yes, yes, that's good. Got some feedback. So yeah, so thank you all. And yes, and the answer is yes. So MATLAB does have block comments. So I think it was proposed, not very far from now. I think it's like 2 or 3 years ago, because for many years, MATLAB didn't have block comments, and I think it's just in the past a few years they just proposed the block comments. So for the block comments, it's kind of a little bit different from other programming language. So in MATLAB, the block comments is the percent sign with the curly brackets. So you want to pay attention that is for the start of the block comments is percent sign with the curly brackets, and for the end of the block is also the percent sign with the right curly bracket. And if you want to if you type two percent signs in a row, that will cause the MATLAB to go into cell mode. So that's something you want to pay attention. And the cell mode sometimes will make your there's nothing special about the cell mode. It's just to help you make your code more readable, and it's easy to follow by other programmers. When some other people or students read your MATLAB code, that will make it more readable. Yeah. All right. So is there any questions so far? If no questions, I will keep going. All right. So what's the first print or systems test for all the programming language? Is hello world, right? So how do you write a hello world in MATLAB? Well, to write to print hello world, you can use the fprintf hello world directly as shown here. And but in MATLAB, you always want to write with a function. Why? Because it contains the scope of the variables. And in your homework, and I will also mention that in your homework 1, for all the homeworks, you want to work them with functions. And so to print hello world in a function, you can use a function, hello world, and then you can use the fprintf. Let me see if I can use the pen here. Okay, I'll use my pen. So the function must be followed with an end. So that's the end of your function. And the hello world is your function name. And in this function, we only have one simple statement. It's fprintf. And for the text you want to print out, you put it in the single quotes. So those are the single quotes. And the \n just represent we will return to another line. So very straightforward, right? Oops. Oh. Okay. Another one is Okay, the next is the native data types. So in Matlab, there are many different data classes, and on the bottom right in this slide, I give you a table which shows the data classes in Matlab. And there are 3 data types we commonly use in Matlab, which is the unsigned integer 8, and which is mainly for the images and for the unsigned characters. But usually these are clipped to the range from 0 to 252. So that's about 2 to the power 8 to the power 8. So that's why it's unsigned integer 8. So, and also another one is the double, which is the default mass type for speed reason in Matlab. And another one is the float data type and integer 16. And they're possible used, for example, for some multispectral camera, they usually generate for the images they generated, and those images are usually in the integer 16s, and it's hardly used. But you want to know there are some data types like that. So I mentioned the statement. So what is a statement in Matlab? So for a simple statement, you can expect something like left variable equals right variable, ended with a semicolon. A semicolon at the end of a statement is used to surprise your output. And if a semicolon is not included in Matlab, Matlab will display on the screen the result of the operations specified in that line. And for the compound statement, it means that here I give a simple example is a if-else statement, which means you have a if and followed with your conditions, and you have an and at the end of the statement. So those are kind of what a statement is. So strings. So how are strings done in the Matlab? We use the single quotes or double quotes in, I think in the later Matlab versions, we can also use double quotes now. And to create a string variable, you can just use, here's an example, is my string variable equals hello world, and end it with semicolon. And to print your, for example, here is another example is pi. Pi is, to print the pi, you can see that this is the control string prints out, and followed by the percent symbol 6.2f. F means the float data type. So here's a quick question for you. What does the percent sign means? What does 6.2 mean here? Does anyone know the answer? If you know the answer, you can type it in the chat window. Does the 2 mean number of digits after the decimal? Yes. Thanks, Michael. You're totally right. 2 digits after decimal point. I think it's the precision, yes. All right, thanks for your feedback. Thanks for the answer. So in Matlab, the first number after the percent sign is the number of spaces allocated for the number to be printed. So in this case, the Matlab will allocate 6 space for the output. And the second number, just like you guys mentioned, the second number which comes after the dot is the specifier of the number of digits after the decimal point for the number to be printed. So for this one, you can expect the output will be like 3.14. And also, when you assign some new variables, make sure you avoid the variables I and j because they are, in Matlab, they are capped for the complex numbers. Okay, so I give you some fundamental knowledge about Matlab. And this class is about image, right? We want to process images. So let's see how we can load and process images. So those three functions you want to keep in your mind because you will always use them in the image processing, which is IM_read, RGB to gray, and IM_show. So here I have an example. It's a Pierce image. And if you want to read and display the image, you just read the Pierce image in this function. And you want to know that this image has 3 channels, which is red, green, and blue. And to display the image in Matlab, you just use IM_show RGB in the Matlab. And here I introduce another function is the RGB to gray. So RGB to gray will convert the true color image RGB to the grayscale image. And you may wonder, so RGB has 3 channels, right? Grayscale image only has 1 channel. So how does it process that, right? Does the RGB to gray will consider all the channels or just use one of them? Well, it turns out that RGB to gray function converts the RGB images to grayscale by eliminating the hue and saturation information and while retaining the luminance. So if you don't know what hue and saturation is, so no worries, we will cover that topic in the following lectures. And all you need to keep in your mind is that RGB to gray will keep the luminance information for the image. And also, I want to mention that if you have a parallel computing toolbox installed, RGB to gray can perform this conversion on a GPU, which stands for the graphical processing unit. And the input RGB image can be of class of unsigned integer 8, unsigned integers 16, or double data type. And the output image is of the same class as the input. So if you use unsigned integer 8 for your input, the output will also be unsigned integer 8. All right, so any questions? So if no question, I will keep going. All right, let's go to the next one. So another function is the IM resize, so which will change the size of the image. So for example, here I have a galaxy image, and I want to change it to half of the original size. So by using IM resize function, there are 2 arguments. The first one is your input image, and the second factor is the size of the new image. So for this one, we want to half of the original image, so we use 0.5 here. And to display display both of the image, you can use figure, IM_show the original image, and then another figure, and IM_show the new image. So every time you use figure command or figure function, it will create a figure window in Matlab. So you see it displayed in different figure windows. So if you use just one, our new image will overlap the old image. So it will only display the resized image for you. All right, so next is the flow control, and the ability to control the flow of operations based on a set of predefined conditions is the heart of all programming language, right? Either Python, C++, or Matlab is the heart of the programming languages. And in fact, conditional branching was one of two key developments that led to the formulation of general purpose computers back in 1940s. The other development was the use of memory to hold the stored programs and data. And Matlab provides 9 different flow control statements. As shown in the table, the common ones are the if and for or while loop, the break, the continue, switch, return, and try catch, and par for, which is the parallel for loop and used with parallel computing toolbox or Matlab coders. So let's say a few of them. So for time reason, I won't be able to cover all of them. And I think in Matlab, in the textbook, there are tens of examples. You can try to play with the code. And oh, if you don't have the textbook, I think I uploaded the first 2 chapters printed version in my courses, and let me know if you have access to that. Okay, the first one is the conditional statement, if. So for the if statement, it has a syntax, if something, and then the statements, and by the end. And if you have more comments, you can have if, else, other statements, and end. So the expression is evaluated. So something here is evaluated first. And if the evaluation yields true, Matlab will execute one or more commands denoted here as the statements. And between the if and end lines, so if the expression is false, Matlab will skip all the statements between the if and end lines and resumes execution at the line following the end lines. So when nesting ifs, each if must be paired with a matching end. So that's something you want to keep in your minds. So how about an if-else ladder? So sometimes maybe you have more conditions you want to evaluate. You can use the else if. So which is very similar to the if-else. So if the expression is true, the first statements are executed and control is transferred to the end statement. So if the first expression evaluates false, then expression is the else if expression will be evaluated. So you want to pay attention that usually else statement has no condition, and the else and else if statements can appear by themselves after an if statement. They do not need to appear in pairs as shown in this example, and it's acceptable to have multiple else if statements. Let's say a more specific example here. So is there a multi-way decision? Of course. So This is the statement of choice for controlling the flow of a Matlab function based on different types of inputs. For example, we have a function called test switch, and we have a for loop here, which will iterate from 1 to 3. And the switch case will judge your variable. And for example, for the first for loop, the variable will equal to 1. And so that's case 1. So it will print the case 1. And for the second for loop, the variable becomes 2. So that in that case, it will print case 2. And then for the third for loop, the variable equals to 3, and it will print, otherwise this runs. And you want to pay, we have 3 ANDs here. So the first AND will be the end of the switch. The second AND is the for loop. And the last one is to end of our functions. So the switch, so in case you are not familiar with switch case, so the switch construct executes groups of statements based on the value of a variable or expression, the keywords case, and otherwise delineate the groups. So only the first matching case is executed. So there must always be an AND to match a switch statement as shown here. So the first AND. And also the curly braces are used when multiple expressions are introduced in the same case statement. So the next one is how to print things in Matlab. So I think I have showed something in the previous slides, but let's take a look at this one. So to print your string, you can still use the fprintf function, and you can have a format string and variables to print. For example, if we have a variable called full equals 3.918, and to print this, you can assign the format string. For example, as we mentioned earlier, we can allocate 6 space for this float variable, and we have 2 decimals. We have 2 digits after the decimal, so that means the output of this for will be 3.91. And another interesting function is the fopen function. So for the fopen, for example, if we want to create my output file.txt file, we can use fopen function, and W means is the in write mode. So W means the write mode. So if it's R, it will be read mode, so which is similar to other programming languages. And so we can use like fprintf, and fp is the file, and hello file word, and \n. So this will write this line into my output file, the text file you created. And so make sure you close the fopen function, so which is you use fclose. Could you please also, we have a question from could you please explain the significance of 6 in percent sign? Okay, so like I mentioned, in the computer will save the data in the memory, and so 6 is we allocate 6 space for our variables. And for example, in your memory, you may have memory locations, And when we assign 6, that means we only use 6 space in our memory to save the data set. So if we don't assign the 6, and MATLAB may, I think it will randomly assign the memory for you, and you may use a bigger space for your variables. That is not what we what we wanted. So the significance is, I will say, try to save memory for your computer. So does that solve your problem? Does that answer your question? Yeah, no problem. So any other question for this print stuff? If no question, I will keep going. And for format conversions, so you saw %f, which is float, and of course you can also use other data types like integers, strings, or single characters, and also for some other things, you can have the new line character or carriage return and the tab character. What is a carriage return? That's a good question from Michael. Okay, so a carriage return, sometimes known as a cartridge return, and often shortened to CR. You can in computer you can say CR or CR or just return. So it is a control character, or mechanism used to reset a device position to the beginning of a line of a text. So it is closely associated with line fade and new line concepts. And although it can be considered separately in its own right. So, why there is an echo? Okay, so you can consider is recite a device position to the beginning of a line of a text. So that's carriage return. No problem. Okay, let's keep going. Well, for loop. So a for loop executes a group of statements in a specified number of times. And the basic syntax is shown here with an example. Use for, and your variable is from 1 to 4, and followed with an and. So this will print 1, 2, 3, 4 for you. And you want to pay attention that the value of index in the for loop start with a value of 1 and increased in increments of 1. And here we have another example. You can assign a variable a from -2 to 4. And so for the index equals from 1 to the learns. So learns will give you the learns of your variable. So for this one, it will be like 1, 0, 7. I will say this will be 7. Yeah. And you want to know that for the MATLAB, when we want to get an index of a variable, we use the parentheses. So here, so is, for example, if we want to reach to the variable a, if index equals 1, that will return the first number in this array. So that's -2. Okay, I have another question. What would print if we didn't use the %d format convertence in the first example? That's a good question. So you can try it in the Matlab, because I forgot what the printout is. So try it in Matlab. And if we don't use %d, what's the by default? Maybe it's integer or maybe it's float. So try it. Yeah. Yeah, no problem. Yeah, so sometimes there's also something a professor doesn't know. That's very common. So in this case, you can just try it in the Matlab. And so what do you write for loop? So there is something you want to pay attention in for loop. So here's an example. I created a magic matrix. So what magic matrix does is that it will create a 3x3 matrix here. The numbers will from 1 to 9. And every location will be an identical value in the matrix here. And you want to pay attention that the for loop sets the variable to each column of the input. So for example, at here, if I use the for variable equals in the matrix, and when we print the variable, this loop will only execute 3 times. And that means the output will be like here, attached output here. So for the first for loop, it will print the first column from the magic matrix. And the second for loop will print the second column. So that's something you want to keep in your mind, that the for loop sets the variable to each column of the input. So any question for this output? So you want to pay attention, this will execute 3 times only. So let's see another example. So here is a single column variable, which is, so consider that for loop sets the variable to each column of the input. For this for loop, it will only execute once, so just one time. So those are something you want to pay attention to. And how do you continue a line? So sometimes you may have a statement that is very long, and to organize your code, sometimes you want to use continue a line in several lines. And in this case, you can use the 3 dots at the end of each line. So anything else about the loops? And remember, don't use single letter variables in your MATLAB code. And deep inside a set of nested loops, they usually don't give us any useful information. And usually, like in industry companies, they're looking for explicit variable names, that can help other programmers or to understand the code very well, because in companies, it's not just you, to work on the code. You have teammates, you have colleagues, and make sure you write your code in a meaningful way. And also don't use a single variable in your homework. And for the historical reason, single letter variables, they are used, back in 1970s, in Fortran language. So next I want to mention is the while loop. So here's a very simple example. And we can set up a variable counter equals 0. And while the counter is less than 20, and then we increment the counter by 1. And also for the while, make sure you have the AND function here. So a while loop executes a group of statements for as long as the expression controlling the loop is true. So you want to pay attention to your condition, to the while condition, and make sure they don't run forever. So one more thing is the array indexing. So maybe you have noticed that for the Matlab, the array indices start at 1. So this is because, it's kind of like the Fortran language. For example, if you have a variable, a list, and for the index, and this is a for loop example, and this will print out all the values in the my variable function, my variable. And so something you want to pay attention is that arrays are indexed into using the parentheses. So that's kind of different from some other programming languages. And this is the one-dimensional array, and the array is declared with square brackets. And for the curly braces, we are using them for something else, and which we will mention later, is called the cell arrays. So that's something we will cover. And multi-dimensional arrays. So sometimes you want to pre-initialize them to something that makes sense. And usually this will make Matlab run faster. So for example, if you want to design or create a 3x7 matrix, you can just use zeros function. This will create a 3x7 with all zeros. 3x7. And so this is the following is a for loop to iterate all the values in the functions. Like for column 1, so there are 2 for loops, and for column 1, 2, 3, and so size function will give you the dimension of your matrix. For example, size mat1 will give you the row. This will be 1, 2, 3. And size my matrix 2 will give you 7. So this is from 1 to 7. And also for the Matlab, the multidimensional arrays, for the memory arrangement is column major order. So you will want to access a multidimensional arrays, like we mentioned, you use parentheses and your row and column. So what does column major order mean? So it means that, for example, if you have a Matlab function, if you have a matrix, and for example, you have a colon here, the colon will convert the matrix into a vector. And column major means that it will convert this into vector by column. So you see that after you ran this conversion, you will get a one-dimensional array, so which is a column major. So you see, this is. And clear things. So in MATLAB, you want to clear the variables, you can use clear all. And CLC will clear the console window, and close all will close all the figure and plots. And CLA will clear the current axis. and CLF will clear the current figure. So summary, and I think that's all for today's lecture. And here's the summary, and make sure during our lectures, you're asking questions. You can learn most other languages from the language you already know. This is called transfer learning. And I think some of you did very well. And if you have any questions, you can just type it in the chat window, and so I can stop at an appropriate time and answer your questions. And I think that's it. I'll see you on next week. See you. Bye.